Welcome, everybody, to the NFL show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm your host for the NFL show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host. First up, NFL beat writer Samuel Teets. How you doing, Sam?
Doing great, Mike. How are you doing?
I am great. And, of course, we're 10 minutes late because of this man, as always, Anthony Cervino. How you doing, Anthony?
I'm doing awesome, guys. How are you?
All right. So today, Sam, for some reason, wants to discuss the top 10 quarterbacks of all time. So we are going to do that, and we'll let Sam start it off at number 10.
Yeah, number 10, I want to go a little old school. I wanted to go back to a quarterback kind of really set the tone for, I wouldn't say modern football or modern passing, but it was one of the first quarterbacks to really excel and kind of break the game open. That's Sammy Baugh. I have him at number 10. Played for quite a while back in the 30s, 40s, and then into the 50s even. 6 Pro Bowls, 4-time first-team All-Pro, 2-time NFL champion. If you look back, he really was a guy who, not really, I don't know if pioneering position is the right way to say it, possibly, but he was a guy who was one of the first quarterbacks to excel at throwing the ball and really become a weapon for his team because of that.
Yeah, I wrote a top 20 list, and I had him and Sid Luckman tied at 20 just because they were the first real true quarterbacks. The thing about Sammy Baugh is you can make a case he's the greatest football player of all time. I mean, he was in the same year, he led the league in passing and punting. He also played defensive back. It was a lot different back then. And the other thing you got to remember when they throw the ball is the ball back in the 40s was a bigger ball than it is today. And it was a lot tougher rules. Anthony, what's your take on Sammy Baugh? Did he make your top 10?
Sammy was close. You're not going to like who I put as my number 10. I would actually put Baugh as my number 11. And a lot of it's probably recency bias, but if you want me to give you my number 10, I'm going to probably get some flack, but it's Aaron Rodgers.
Why would you get flack for that?
Because I feel like a lot of people underappreciate Aaron Rodgers and what he's done. Sure, he's only been to 1 Super Bowl and won it, but Aaron Rodgers was playing lights out football for a good stretch. And if it wasn't for his recent little string of injuries and dealing with Mike McCarthy and an inept front office that didn't put a lot around him defensively, I think Aaron Rodgers would have a few more rings. But I would certainly put him above Brett Favre in Green Bay.
I've got him at 14 on my list, but we're just going to top 10, so he's not on my list. I think he is a great quarterback, but I think it's safe to say, I think to make him a top 10 quarterback, Sam, I think another Super Bowl needs to be, put on the resume.
Yeah, I'm right there with you because I don't have Drew Brees in my top 10 right now. And I think if you were to hold those two up, they'd be kind of in similar positions in terms of your rankings. So if Drew Brees isn't in my top 10, I can't put Aaron Rodgers in there either. I know
how about this? Do you have Dan Marino in your top 10?
See, that's where it gets complicated, right? That's where it's a little hypocritical. He's in my top 10.
So you're not going to explain it? You're just going to call yourself a hypocrite and let it stand?
I'm okay with being called a hypocrite sometimes, Mike. But no, I think Dan Marino, at his time, Marino was doing things statistically that were kind of unrivaled. Personally, Aaron Rodgers is a guy who I love watching the way he throws the ball, but there's just something about Aaron Rodgers that doesn't jump out to me as much as some other people. I know he's got the 2 MVPs, but when I watch players like when I go back and watch tape on the guys like Brady and stuff like that, it's different. It's a very different kind of feel to it. I just don't feel Aaron Rodgers is a top 10 quarterback.
And you're too young to have ever went back and watched tape on anything, Sam.
Maybe.
You watched the DVD or a jump drive or something. My number 10.
I was going to say one more on Aaron Rodgers. I believe he's the all-time leader in touchdown to interception ratio. Going into this season, he was at 4.23 and 1 touchdown interception ratio. When Rodgers entered the league, it was Steve Young, and he really doubled Steve Young.
Yes, because the rules have become twice as easy.
Can't argue that. It's
that's
true.
The way I would look at it, because if you look at guys like Kenny Stabler gets in the Hall of Fame, Joe Namath, more interceptions than touchdowns. I think that they play in a day and age where it is a lot easier to have a phenomenal interception to touchdown to interception ratio. But my number 10 is Dan Marino, and I think his regular season numbers are what put him up here. They're undeniable, but it's undeniable his postseason numbers don't stack up. People talk about the lack of defensive running game. You got to remember, in 1983, I believe that was his rookie season. He has this great year. They play a 9-7 Seattle Seahawks team in the Orange Bowl in Miami. He loses. 1985, I think they swept the Patriots in 85. They play him in the AFC Championship game, and they get blown out. He plays terrible. I think the final score was 31-14. And they were double-digit favorites, I think, in both games, at least 7-point favorites. You get to 1992. They host the Buffalo Bills. They're favored to win the game. Marino plays terrible. I think he was an amazing quarterback, but I think his shortcomings in the postseason are hard to ignore, which is why I've got him at number 10, guys.
Yeah, and where would you put him if he won a Super Bowl? If he did get one championship, where would you put him? Do you think that vaults him up much higher on the list?
It helps that he went to a Super Bowl. He did lose the Super Bowl, but he lost it to the 84 Niners, which have a case as maybe the greatest all-around football team that ever lived. I don't think they are, but I think they're definitely top 5. I think there was too many shortcomings in playoff games. I mean, you don't see – he didn't have the kind of success that John Elway had in the playoffs. And like I said, there were 3 times when he was the home team, he was supposed to take his team to the Super Bowl, and he failed. So, I mean, that was 1 in 3 in AFC Championship games. In the AFC Championship game he won in 1984, I think a lot of that was John Elway lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers in the divisional playoffs in 84, 24-17. He was playing with, I believe it was a torn hamstring or thigh muscle, but they lost that game 24-17 in Denver. And I think if Denver wins that game, a healthy Elway, that 1984 AFC Championship game is Miami at Denver, and I think you might have had a little bit of different outcome there too. So I think there was a little bit of help on the one Super Bowl he did get to. But I just think there's too many shortcomings here in playoff games, guys, to rank him much higher than this.
I don't disagree. You know, I have Marino. He's my number 9. Not only the playoff shortcomings, how much of it is Dan Marino's fault? Because weren't those Miami teams around Marino not the greatest?
They weren't the worst, though. They usually didn't have a running game.
Who had more, Russell Wilson or Dan Marino?
Russell Wilson, just because of the defense that they've had for most of his career. But I can also tell you this. You put Russell Wilson in Miami, at that time, the way the game was played, maybe not a lot more success than what Dan Marino had. And I think this, and I know it's unpopular, but I think this all falls on Don Shula, who everybody wants to say is one of the greatest coaches of all time. And it's undeniable what he did in the 60s with the Colts, in the 70s with the Dolphins. But it's also undeniable that his last Super Bowl that he won was Super Bowl 8. And he coached all the way to 1991, 92, I think it was 1993, didn't get another one. And he got to 2 of them, got beat both times. And I think the shortcomings there was the front office, which was Don Shula, in not getting a running game, Anthony.
Yeah, I think it's what Shula, wasn't he the all-time winningest coach when he retired?
Yeah, I think he still is, isn't he?
He might be. It's just that marriage between Dan Marino and Don Shula that I think creates some kind of mystique. Well, because they go hand in hand, as Marino, one of the greatest, Don Shula, one of the greatest, now that Bill Belichick, to me, is the greatest head coach.
I don't think Don Shula even fits in the conversation for greatest head coach.
He only has, what, 1 Super Bowl?
No, they won 2 in a row, but my problem with him is when you look at his career, the thing that stands out is he lost the biggest game in NFL history to a team he was supposed to beat by 3 touchdowns. You know, then he goes to Miami, and that, he goes from Baltimore to Miami, and that was done illegally. And he was the guy that was the head of the competition committee for the last 25 years of his coaching life. But what happened was Carol Rosenblum, basically busted the Dolphins because the Dolphins, even though Shula was under contract, offered him more money. He jumped and took it. And it ended up costing him draft picks and cash back in 1970 because Don Shula did something that was not real honest. And I know Don Shula likes to rip Bill Belichick for, deflated balls and stuff like that. But Belichick never did anything like that.
And just a quick note, Don Shula is the winningest coach of all time in the regular season with 328 wins. Second place is George House with 318, and Bill Belichick is in third with 273.
Yeah. So a lot of that, who's got the better winning percentage between him and Shula, or between Shula and Belichick?
I would assume Belichick, but I'll look it up real quick.
I would too, which will make me assume this. Pete Rose has more base hits than anybody that ever lived, but I don't think there's anybody that's going to say he was the greatest hitter that ever lived. He had 1,000 more at bats than Ty Cobb. He got like 60 more hits. So a lot of that's a longevity record.
So Bill Belichick is a 68.3% winning percentage in the regular season. Don Shula is at 67.7. So not a huge difference.
But it's a huge difference. It's a half a point.
Maybe.
But all right. So number 9 is Dan Marino for Anthony.
Yeah.
My number 9 is Peyton Manning. I think it's similar to Marino, only he did win 2 Super Bowls. And my argument against him is not that he didn't win more Super Bowls, but the fact that he lost multiple home games in the playoffs as a 1 or 2 seed. He was a big favorite by more than a touchdown in most of those games. The Super Bowl he lost was his best chance to prove himself. And on the game-winning drive, he threw a pick 6. I mean, that's the game against the Saints. And he is a great regular season quarterback. He's a very good postseason quarterback, but I really can't see him putting him above 8 or 9 in this spot. And I know Anthony's going to go nuts on this, but it's just the way I see it.
I don't want to discount it too much because you're right with a lot that you're saying, and maybe it's because of my age and a lot of recency bias, because I did see Peyton Manning play and I saw a lot of his career. But again, just like I said about like Aaron Rodgers, Peyton Manning had a lot on offense. He didn't have a ton on defense. That one Super Bowl that he did win with the Colts, that was basically Bob Sanders, Robert Mathis, and Dwight Freeney. There wasn't a ton of help on defense, and that goes for the majority of his career. And until he went to Denver, that's when he had a defense.
But Anthony, the thing is this.
And I don't give Peyton a lot of credit for that one Super Bowl in Denver, by the way.
I don't give him a lot of credit for the Super Bowl in Indianapolis. He played terrible in that game. He threw 2 picks. I mean,
it was the Bears.
They won the game because Rex Grossman was the quarterback on the other team. I mean, and you look at the game against Carolina, Super Bowl 50, I think he threw for 140 yards. It was basically, Brock Osweiler won him 6 or 7 games that year to even get to that situation. So I just don't see where you can put Peyton Manning up with the guys that are in my top 5 or 6, or my guy who is at number 8, who I know a lot of people don't believe or don't think should belong there. But right now, what do you got, Sam? Number 9 or number 8?
No, I got 9. I still at 9. But
okay.
And this one you're not gonna like. I got Brett Favre at number 9. So
that's ignorant.
You're not gonna like this one. But
it's ignorant.
Favre was a guy that did win 3 MVPs, did get a Super Bowl. A lot of ups and downs with Favre. I can understand why you don't like him, because looking at him, there was like I said, there were a lot of ups and downs. There were years where he's very good. There were years where you wondered what he was doing, kind of. There were years where he looks like he almost was slacking off in a sense. And so it's very difficult for me because I'm back and forth with him, because I caught the end of his career really when he's kind of past his prime in a sense. But I still think he deserves to be in the conversation for top 10.
Anthony?
Brett Favre, he is not in my top 10, and that's because I couldn't put 3 Packers in there. Because my number 8 is Bart Starr. I leave Brett Favre off the list. He was a gunslinger. So while he did make a lot of great plays, his natural instinct when he was in trouble was to believe he can put the ball anywhere it needs to be. And that resulted in a lot of turnovers. So that's kind of why I left Favre off. He's not too far out of my top 10, but I just don't put him there because of all of the turnovers and really the lasting memories of Brett Favre in big games. I mean, he threw a pick 6 against the New York Giants in 2007, I believe. And I think he threw another pick 6 when he was with the Minnesota Vikings in a championship game, or at least a playoff game.
It was the NFC Championship game. It was in overtime, and he threw the ball across his body for a pick. I love that game. And the great story is Jim who is one of my buddies. He was a Packer fan. He always loved Brett Favre. And he called me, or I called him right before the overtime, and I said, I guarantee your boy's going to throw a pick. And he did. You also had against Philadelphia in overtime. He threw the pick six that lost them the game. He still holds the record for 6 interceptions in a playoff game against the Rams. And the thing about Brett Favre is, give me a great drive he had at the end of a playoff game to win it.
I don't know.
I can give you one. His first playoff game against the Detroit Lions. He threw like an 80-yard touchdown pass that won the game at the end of the game. Other than that, there's nothing. The thing that could have put him in the top 10, and we talked about this because Troy Aikman's not in my top 10, even though I think he's probably one of the 10 greatest quarterbacks. But with Troy Aikman, he never had that chance at the end of a Super Bowl or a championship game to really make that play to basically make himself immortal. Against John Elway, Brett Favre had that opportunity. Super Bowl 32, the game's 24-24. Elway takes the Broncos, goes 75 yards to take a 31-24 lead. He gives the ball back to Favre with 2 minutes left. Favre's got the ball at his own 40. He goes 4 and out with 3 incomplete passes. That's the difference between Brett Favre and the guys that are on this list. Because if he makes that drive and they win that game, even though I don't like him, he's in my top 10. But, I mean, when you look at the 10 most memorable plays from Brett Favre's career, especially if you go playoff games, Anthony, you got him in your top 10. Or was it Anthony had him in the top 10 or Sam?
I did.
Sam, you got him in the top 10. Tell me what his greatest play in the playoffs was.
Huh. Got nothing.
Okay. Anthony, you don't have him in there. You got anything?
On Brett Favre, on his memorable playoff play?
Yeah.
I don't have one.
What is the most memorable play or game in the regular season for Brett Favre's career?
Raiders, probably the one big game after his dad passed away, probably.
Yeah. Against a terrible Raiders defense where he basically chucked the ball up in the air and his receivers went and got it.
And I'll go one up on that. The most memorable play that sticks out to me in Brett Favre is an Antonio Freeman touchdown on Monday Night Football, where it was all the wide receiver.
Yeah. So I just don't think Brett Favre belongs on this list. I think he belongs third on a list of greatest Packer quarterbacks because I'm with Anthony. Anthony's got Bart Starr at number 8. I've got Bart Starr higher than that. Now Sam, since he's young, is going to have to go look up Bart Starr.
I know who Bart Starr is.
I know. I'm just kidding. So who did you said you had Bart Starr at number 8, Anthony? You want to talk about it a little bit or let it stay? I'm
gonna row Bart Starr and Terry Bradshaw as my number 8 because I have them both in there for what they've done in the postseason and their championships because they both played on teams with really good defenses. Bart Starr, really good running game, but he played his best football in the postseason. I believe was like 9-1, 104 quarterback rating. So because of their accomplishments in the postseason and in the Super Bowls, I'm going to put them as my number 8s because they both had a ton around them when you look at all the Hall of Famers sprinkled on those teams.
All right. My number 8 is Steve Young, 2-time NFL MVP, Super Bowl MVP, also won a record 6 NFL passing titles. I think he was mostly overlooked because he followed Joe Montana. And then I think the early part of his career was spent with the LA Express and USFL and then with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So his first 5 or 6 years, there's nothing there. So you can only imagine. I believe this, even though I've got him at 8. I think if Steve Young, those first 6 years would have been played on an NFL team that was decent, I think he might be a top 4 or 5 guy. He started his career as more of a running quarterback, but as he got older, he became a great passer and a great leader. And this is a comparison you won't hear much about, but Steve Young, to me, is a lot like Randall Cunningham, who when he transitioned and just became a passer, he became even better. The difference was Randall Cunningham was stuck in Philadelphia where they wanted him running with Buddy Ryan and Rich Kotite, the guys that coached that team. And really, it wasn't until his end of his career when he got with Bill Belichick or was it Brian Billick, right? But he goes with Brian Billick in Minnesota. He has a great year or two. So the same thing of Randall Cunningham. Maybe he's on this list if he actually has a football coach at any point during his career, except for the last couple of years. But my number 8 is Steve Young. Sam, did you give us a number 8 yet?
No, I didn't, but my number 8 was Dan Marino, we kind of already talked about.
Oh, yeah, you were already proven wrong on that. But not as wrong as you were on the Bart Starr pick. Or not Bart Starr, but
Brett Favre
pick.
Yeah, I'm hoping things get a little bit better as we go up towards the top of this list.
Yeah, you're sucking so far. Anthony, do you agree with me on that?
On what?
That Sam's really, spitting the bit in the show.
Well, it gives a good variance between the three of us.
Yeah, it's better than us all agreeing. But let's see. Where are we at? Number 7?
Yeah, number 7.
All right. My number 7 is Otto Graham. I think it's impossible to overlook a man who played quarterback for 10 years and led his team to the championship game every year he played. He won 7 titles, had an overall record of 114-20. Plus, you add in a playoff record of 9-3, and you have genuinely a great quarterback. Otto was a 3-time NFL MVP, and he has the best winning percentage of any quarterback in NFL history to this day at 81.4%. Anybody leave Otto off their list?
No.
And that means Anthony just added him. How about you, Sam?
Well, I had Otto on my list, but I've got a little higher up. At number 7, I've got Rodgers Staubach. I feel like he's the guy who doesn't get a lot of credit sometimes from people my age because they don't see the stats. He doesn't have maybe the numbers, but he's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. I think he's probably the best quarterback in Dallas Cowboys history, in my opinion, even better than Troy Aikman. And we know because he didn't really start in the NFL until 27 years old because he was working out for military service during his time, so he missed some of his early years. And then he was forced to kind of retire because of injuries at some point, even after a Pro Bowl season. So for me, I think Staubach could have gone even higher, could have risen to even higher heights if he had maybe started a little sooner and hadn't dealt with injuries towards the later end of his career.
Yeah, I had him at number 12 on my list. I think the military commitment was a killer. And also, Anthony, the big difference here is I think Super Bowl 13. If he wins Super Bowl 13, I think everybody has him on his top 10 or in their top 10.
What is that? One of the Pittsburgh losses?
Yeah, that last.
What's his name? Where the tight end dropped it? Jackie Smith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Best drop of all time.
What was that?
The best drop of all time.
Why is that?
Because he got Pittsburgh in our Super Bowl. That's why.
It's really rude.
It's all right.
You're a Cowboys fan, and neither one of you saw the game. You were both nowhere to be found.
It's okay. I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I live in the past. It's okay.
Okay. Let's see. Where are we at? Number 6?
Yeah.
No. My number 7.
Your number 7. Okay.
My number 7 is Drew Brees. I like Drew Brees a lot. He's consistent. He has all those records and 5,000-yard seasons, and he's helped the Saints, really pulled the Saints out of the gutter. Only 1 Super Bowl. And in the past couple of seasons, especially, I don't know if you can put it all on Brees. I know that the Saints want to put it on the refs. There always seems to be an excuse. But I think with all of those statistics, to me, he's Dan Marino with the ring, and that's why I'm not going to put him up any higher.
All right.
He's Marino with the ring to me.
I don't have him on the list. I think he needs to win another one. And I think he's been on teams good enough to win it the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I think it's unfair to leave him off.
Why?
Because of how consistent he is. I can't remember a time where Drew Brees did not produce. And he has produced. I mean, earlier in his career, even his Super Bowl season, outside of Marcus Colston, it's hard to name a Saints wide receiver, maybe Dante Stallworth.
Well, I would say this. You got to produce in the fourth quarter of championship and playoff games, which he has not done in the last, decade?
Yeah.
All right. So where do you have Otto Graham ranked?
6.
Okay. So you think that what Otto Graham did is about the same as Drew Brees?
Well, I didn't see Otto Graham play outside of, and I say this all the time in the show, outside of what I learned on YouTube and the NFL Network and NFL Films. I didn't really get to see Otto Graham play. Can only go by what I've seen highlight-wise and what I read about him.
Yeah, but what you read about is a guy who played the championship game every year. He won 7 championships. He has a winning percentage of 82%, 3 NFL MVPs, and you've got him one spot ahead of Drew Brees. So, I don't know. Sam, you want to get in here on this? You've been wrong on everything. We'll see where you go.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say, like, I'm not really the quarterback expert here for this thing, but I would just say with Drew Brees, my issue with him again is the one Super Bowl. Like my top 7, everyone in my top 7 is multiple championships because I think you have to be. I mean, once you reach that point, you have to have multiple Super Bowl titles, in my opinion. So I don't have Rodgers on my top 10. I don't have Brees in my top 10. I do have Marino. I think Marino and Favre are the only guys I have that have one title on my top 10 right now. So I do think the multiple championships is a huge thing. If Brees wins another one here at the end of his career, it changes the narrative entirely, I think. But if he stays with one, he'll be a good quarterback, but he won't ever be like the top 7 kind of guy, in my opinion. Top 7, top 8.
All right, where are we at? My number 6?
Yep.
All right, number 6, I'm going to go Bart Starr. I think he was largely overshadowed because of Lombardi and the talent around him. Quiet leader, but the thing about him is 10 playoff games, and he had a passer rating of over 100 in every playoff and championship game he ever played in. He led the Packers to 5 NFL championships, including the first 2 Super Bowls, where he was also named the MVP of both games, I believe. A career playoff record of 9-1. I think he's a guy that gets overlooked because of Rodgers and Favre. But I think, Anthony, when you look at it, he has to be the number 1 Packer quarterback of all time.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all.
I know, that's why I went to you. Sam was screwed up by asking that. Sam, who you got at number 6?
Hey, we're going to continue the issues you've had on my list. This is a guy you really love. I'm going to leave him a little low on my list, and it's John Elway at number 6. I could be swayed to move him up higher, but I'm leaving him at number 6 for now. A guy with 2 Super Bowl championships, although he went there plenty of times, but we talked about his teams were always the most well-built. It wasn't until the end of his career they actually put players around him to the point where he could win Super Bowl titles. 9 Pro Bowls, 1-time MVP, and one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. But he's only at number 6.
That's atrocious.
Yeah.
Anthony, what do you think about that?
What about Elway at 6?
Yeah.
I don't hate it. I have him a little bit higher, but if you go back and watch any film of John Elway, I've read Elway comp to Patrick Mahomes with the mobility and talent-wise and arm-wise. His first couple of years with the Broncos, he is all they seem to have, and he still managed to get them to 3 Super Bowls, even though they lost. And what propelled Elway to even make my list was obviously his final 2 seasons in which he won Super Bowls. Without those 2, you put him back there, or I'd put him back there with Marino.
I think you're all idiots. I don't think anybody that has John Elway anywhere below number 3 is nuts.
I knew that was coming, Mike. I knew you were going to say that.
It's just absolutely stupid. If you look at that and you watch what this guy did in the teams he was on, tell me his wide receivers that did anything once they left him early on. He had the 3 amigos, Mark Jackson, was it Johnson? I mean, he had nothing to work with. And this is the thing. In these playoff games, we talked about guys that get it done in the clutch. And that was John Elway. If I think about this, was it 91 against the Oilers? I mean, he leads them down. He makes a miraculous throw to win it. Maybe the greatest drive in NFL history, 98 yards in the last 5 minutes against the Cleveland Browns in the dog pound. It's 10 degrees below zero, and he's throwing the ball 70 miles an hour, sticking it in guys' stomachs. You go farther, Super Bowl 32, where he outdueled Brett Favre. And you could say what you want here about he didn't win till he had Terrell Davis, which he didn't. But also, remember, Terrell Davis, had a massive migraine in that game, and Elway overcame that. And you remember Elway, almost 40 years old, helicoptering through the air to get a first down. The guy was maybe the greatest leader as an NFL quarterback that anybody has ever seen. And he had the legs to do whatever. I mean, 1984, he loses to the Steelers in the divisional playoff, but he's playing with an injury most guys wouldn't even attempt to play with. You look at the Super Bowls that he lost. I mean, that 86 Giants, one of the great teams of all time, one of the great defenses of all time. Hell, you had Belichick and freaking Parcells coaching it. You had Phil Simms as the quarterback who doesn't get the credit he deserves. And on defense, you had a defense that I think was better than the 85 Bears with LT. I mean, that was a loaded defense up front and at linebacker. That was a game that was close. I think it was 10-9 or something at halftime. They got blown out because the Giants were just better. And then you go to the next year against the Redskins. I still think this is a game they would have won if the officials wouldn't have made a bad call. That game is 10-0. Doug Williams goes back to pass. He goes down on one knee, gets spun, drops the ball, and he's hurt. Instead of calling it a fumble, they blew the play dead. A couple plays later, Williams comes back, throws a touchdown pass, 10-7. The Redskins scored 35 unanswered points in that half. If that ball is dropped there and the Broncos have a 10-0 lead and they've got 1st and 10 on the 30 going in, that could change everything. You also if you look at the Bills run, 1991 AFC Championship game, where I think they're down 10-7, and they get the ball for a chance to win it at the end of the game, but Gary Kubiak's playing quarterback because Elway's ripped a hamstring off the back of his legs, so he can't play. There's a couple more right there. But the thing about John Elway was this. No matter what the odds, you had a chance to win with John Elway. Now, I don't think when we look at Peyton Manning, like against Denver, or against Seattle, the year they got beat like 6-0-6, the game like that, I mean, John Elway is going to keep fighting in. You watch Peyton Manning, he tapped out in that game pretty much after the opening safety. So I think what you got to look at for a quarterback, two of the biggest things, toughness and the ability to compete for the entire game no matter what happens. When you look at that, I don't know that I've ever seen anybody better than John Elway. I got him at number 3, by the way. But I've actually thought about putting him at number 1. Because when I think about it, if you think about John Elway on those 49er teams or John Elway with the Patriots, is he going to win less than what those guys did? But how about this? If you put Joe Montana or Tom Brady on the Denver Broncos of the 1980s, do they even get to one Super Bowl? Because there's a skill set with John Elway that Brady and Montana did not have. I mean, Elway could throw the ball 65 miles an hour. You know, he had great arm strength. He had great field vision. He had everything that they lacked. They won because not just because of systems, because they were great quarterbacks. I've got them both ranked ahead of him. But they had a lot more to work with. And like I said, I think if you put Elway in their situations, he wins just as many. I don't think they win as much.
I mean, I don't know about that. I'm not willing to go that far to talk about something like Tom Brady. I think he would win probably just as much, close to what John Elway did.
So you're telling me that John Elway in 1983 or 84, or Tom Brady in 83 or 84, his rookie year with the Patriots, you put him on that Broncos team, you tell me they go 12-4 and host a playoff game.
Well, not his rookie year, no.
But that was John Elway's rookie year.
Yeah. All right, you got me.
Like you can't win. All right, well, let's see. Where are we at here? Anybody know?
I'm at my number 5. I have to give my number 5. I don't know if everyone gave their 6 yet. I gave my 6. I gave John Elway, and that's where everyone freaked out.
Yeah, I gave my 6. Anthony, did you give your 6?
I did.
I thought you did. All right, what's your number 5, Sam?
My number 5 is Otto Graham, so I had him ranked pretty high as well, because like everything you mentioned, the winning percentage, the championships, 7-time first-team All-Pro, basically the best quarterback in the league for at least 7 years. Led the league in passing 5 times, led the league in passing touchdowns 3 times, and in quarterback rating 5 times. So it's for me, he was a guy who really dominated the sport statistically, but also came out and dominated the fact that he's winning games for a team and for a franchise that hasn't won now in basically what feels like forever.
All right, number 5, Anthony.
I feel like I got not skipped, but I think because of I was saying I had Elway a little bit higher. I feel like I missed a number somewhere, so I'm going to throw in Roger Staubach here. And, Roger Staubach, you can make the case that he had a lot of...
Number 5, Anthony?
What?
At number 5?
I feel, no, maybe, or behind. I lost track. Because I had Elway at 5. So at some point, I missed Roger Staubach on my list.
All right. Well, let's just ignore him. You have John Elway at number 5, which has already been proven to be wrong. So we want to go on to my number 5.
Well, hold on. Let me read something that's interesting that I saw about Staubach here that I wanted to note. That his 2 Super Bowl losses came by a total of 8 points. And in those games, Dallas averaged 25 points a game, going against defenses that finished 3rd, 2nd, 3rd, and 1st. And those are the finishes, I guess, of the defenses he played against in those 4 Super Bowls. And combined, those opponents gave up 11.7 points a game. And Staubach managed to average 25 against him in those 4 Super Bowls. So I feel like that kind of goes under the radar of how great Roger Staubach really was.
And what was his record in those games?
2-2.
Okay.
But combined 8 points in those losses.
Where do you have Terry Bradshaw ranked?
He's I told you I had him tied at 8 with Bart Starr.
Exactly. But you got Roger Staubach.
I'm a Cowboys fan. I got to get one of my guys on there.
That has no bearing on anything. Are you telling me that Roger Staubach was better than Terry Bradshaw?
Yes.
All right. So let's do this. The 4 Super Bowls. And this is off the top of my head. You can look it up. Can you tell me who Terry Bradshaw beat and where the defense was ranked? Because he beat the Purple People Eaters, the Minnesota Vikings. He beat the Dallas Cowboys
twice,
in Super Bowl 10. He beat the Cowboys in 13, and he beat the Rams in 14. All 4 of those were pretty damn good defenses, and he won all 4 games. And he kicked Roger Staubach's ass in both games they played against each other.
Yeah, but couldn't Roger Staubach do more with his mobility? Wasn't he a better player?
No way. Terry Bradshaw is the most underrated quarterback that ever lived. Terry Bradshaw is, where am I at, number 5? Terry Bradshaw is my number 5. I would take Terry Bradshaw over Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Dan Marino, Steve Young, all these guys almost any day of the year.
Do you have Unitas on your list?
Yeah, I got Unitas at number. Well, actually, I got Unitas 5, Bradshaw 4. But I'll just go with Bradshaw 5 right now since we were talking about him. And I know he wasn't the most accurate quarterback. His mechanics weren't that good. But, I mean, come on. He in the playoffs, 4 Super Bowl wins, 2 Super Bowl MVPs. And what really separated him were the throws he made when the game was on the line in the Super Bowl. If you look at every Super Bowl he played, all of them were in doubt in the 4th quarter. And in all 4 of those games, he threw a touchdown pass. I mean, if you look going into the 4th quarter of Super Bowl 14, his last Super Bowl against that Rams team, the Rams led them 19-17. You know, he throws 2 deep touchdown passes to Stallworth. Super Bowl 10 against the Cowboys, deep passes to Lynn Swann. Super Bowl 13, you got the deep ball to Swann earlier in the game, Stallworth later in the game. I mean, and the Minnesota Vikings of 1975, one of the great, or 74, one of the great defenses of all time. And that Cowboys defense was pretty damn good too in Super Bowl 13. He put 35 points on them, and people will say, well, Roger Staubach only lost by 4 points. But if you go back and watch the game, that was a game that was 35-17 with like 4 minutes left. So people want to blame Jackie Smith, but even if Jackie Smith catches the ball in the game's time, the Pittsburgh Steelers are still going to win because they're the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they are America's team. They're America's team. I don't know how you can be America's team if you lose. You know, this is the thing.
Do you know why that there was a hole at the top of Texas Stadium?
There's a hole in the top of your head, too. What the hell is the difference? My thing is this. That's because
God his team play football.
What you're telling me is this. What you're telling me is this. what you're telling me is this, then. God can't watch a game in a dome stadium. He doesn't have the capabilities to see through the roof.
Probably.
How about this? Since the Steelers were America's team,
but if
God
you went
just
on
made
that tour in Texas Stadium, that's what they told us. Because I've been on that
that's
tour.
what they told you. That's what they told you. And see, the difference is this. You go on a tour at Pittsburgh, you get to see more championship banners than you do when you go to Dallas. Did I sound like Shannon Sharp there? When you go to Dallas. I mean, come on. America's team is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Any place the Steelers play.
Well, don't they have the same amount of championships anyway? 5?
A third of the crowd.
6.
I have no clue. Yeah. I'm pretty sure the Steelers have more, though, because y'all haven't won one.
Yeah.
Since, how many you got there, Dallas?
5.
And this is the bigger thing. How many times did the Cowboys just crap one away? I mean, if you look, they couldn't beat the Green Bay Packers to save their life. They lose 2 games on the last play of the game back-to-back in 65 and 66 or 66 and 67. Then the Dallas Cowboys were known as America's chokers until they finally won a Super Bowl in Super Bowl VI. You know, they blew Super Bowl V. They were losing in the playoffs to Cleveland, Baltimore. Then you guys come up, you win a Super Bowl VI. You win Super Bowl XII. And you only won Super Bowl XII, let's face it, because Rob Lytle was given a gift touchdown when he was a yard and a half short. Because if y'all would have had to deal with the Oakland Raiders, you'd have got your asses handed to you. So I think that was for TV ratings to get the Broncos, America's Cinderella team, in there and to make sure the Cowboys would get to win a Super Bowl, because they knew Super Bowl 13 was probably going to be the Steelers, and there's nothing the Cowboys could do about it. And if you look at the years the Cowboys and Steelers played in the Super Bowl, I'm pretty sure they played in the regular season those years too, and the Steelers beat them 28-3 and 14-3 in those 2 years. So the Pittsburgh Steelers don't have like 20, 25-year gaps where they can't even get to a championship game. And I can't believe I'm defending the Pittsburgh Steelers. But
you do it every episode, so keep going.
Yeah, because I respect them because of their greatness.
Yeah, I like the streaks Mike's been on here. He's been really making my case for me for the Pittsburgh Steelers at this point.
And the Dallas Cowboys, let's face it, are just epic failures most times.
It's easy.
You had a couple years in early. Let's see. You had two separate seasons in the 70s, and you had a couple back-to-back seasons in the 90s, and that's it. So since 1960, that's how many years now? So that's 60 years. It's 60 years. America's team has won how many Super Bowls?
5 more than the Cincinnati Bengals.
Doesn't matter, because, see, this is the difference between me and you. Number one, I was born where my team plays. I didn't choose them because they were real good. You live in Jersey. Maybe you should have cheered for the Giants or the Jets. Actually, if you'd have cheered for the Giants, you'd have seen more Super Bowl wins, right? Or I don't know how old you are, but I'm pretty sure you might have.
I'm 35. I was around for the 90s.
But you weren't around for the 80s, because if you were, then it would definitely be better to be a Giants fan, because being a Cowboys fan only counts in the 70s and the 90s.
But the last episode or an episode or 2 ago, you were telling me how in the 80s the Cowboys were pretty good. You were making the case for the Cowboys
wait a second.
being an all-time decade team or dynasty.
No, that was a dynasty team.
Right.
But the problem with the dynasty was the last 20 years have to not count to be in that conversation. The conversation we had was from the mid-60s to the mid-80s. Nobody ever talked about after that. Because once you get past 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, and 90, they sucked for 5 years. That's a killer. 91, they come back, they make the playoffs, and then the damnedest thing I ever saw, the Detroit Lions just beat the hell out of them in the playoffs. I love that game too. I think it was 34-6 or 31-6. I love that game. I got it on DVD. Sometimes I watch it just because it makes me feel.
Weren't they at that point? They were a year or 2 removed from a 1-15 season.
What's that matter? They're playing the Detroit Lions.
How quick that they turned it around.
What do you think the Detroit Lions were 2 years before they beat the hell out of your Dallas Cowboys?
Oh, they picked Barry Sanders that year, right? The 89 draft was the Troy Aikman and Barry Sanders draft. Deion Sanders, too.
Deion Sanders, too. Did the Cowboys draft Deion? No, they had to wait till he was good and just wanted to come for the money.
Got him a Super Bowl, though.
Plus, you all just threw away Tom Landry.
I didn't throw away Tom Landry. Jerry did.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Jerry brought 3 more Super Bowls.
Yeah, he brought 3 more Super Bowls in 30 years of ineptness right after it. So my number 5 is Terry Bradshaw. My number 4, because I think you guys already gave your 5, didn't you? Or did Anthony? Because Anthony just kind of bounces around.
No, I did.
All right, my number 4 is Johnny Unitas. I think you got to put Unitas there, just kind of the same reason you got to put Manning in there. The only difference is Johnny Unitas actually won stuff a lot. 4 NFL titles, 4-time league MVP. And I think this is the guy that really revolutionized him and Otto Graham, Bart Starr. They really revolutionized the way quarterbacks played the NFL. And the thing that was really amazing is he held a record for the most consecutive games with a touchdown pass for 52 years before anybody broke it. So I think Johnny Unitas has to be in the top 5 if anybody's list that has any common sense at all. What do you think, Sam?
No, I agree. He's in my top 5, but he's not my number 4. I have 4 out of Peyton Manning, which I know you're not going to like either.
Well, that's just stupid. But, I mean, the way the shows went, the fact that you said that makes me right.
Well, no, it fits for my list for the whole show, though. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But no, I do have him at number 4 after 5 MVP seasons. He gets basically he won 2 Super Bowls, but let's be honest, he didn't really do anything for the last one. Anyone could have won that Super Bowl with that Denver defense, really. So pretty much 1 Super Bowl there. And he actually has, I think people ignore that, he's had some of the best statistical years of his career with Denver. Like the first 3 years with Denver were probably better than almost any year he had with Indianapolis before that.
All right. What do you got, Anthony?
I also have Peyton as my number 4, and I have Unitas as my number 3. But, let's not knock what Peyton did with the Colts. I know he had some big seasons in Denver, but he had some good players with Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison on the outside, Dallas Clark. Anytime you saw Peyton Manning play, I always felt like he was going to throw a competitive game. No matter how.
How about this? Difference between him and Tom Brady. Would it be safe to say is the fact that Brady, after his first 5 years, decided to take less money so he could have a defense with him?
Yeah, you could say that. You could definitely say that.
Not everybody is going to make the same decisions as Tom Brady.
That everybody's going to win 6 Super Bowls then, or however many he's got then.
Can you make the case that because Brady was the biggest issue for Peyton Manning, right? Brady and Belichick. If the Patriots weren't the Patriots, maybe Peyton Manning wins 5 or 6.
Well, this is the thing, though. Peyton Manning at the University of Tennessee, every year they'd be ranked number 1, and they'd lose to Florida every year. He left. The year after he left, a guy by the name of T. Martin became the starting quarterback. They weren't even ranked in the top 10 at the start of the season. And what do you know it? They won a national championship right after Peyton Manning left. If I had a mic, I would drop it. So that's my Peyton Manning soup. You just
don't like him.
No, I don't. I do not like guys that have done the things he's done. And I'm not talking about football-wise.
I mean, Peyton Manning has lost playoff games on Mike Vanderjagt's leg. It wasn't all on Peyton.
No, he didn't. He lost that playoff game to Pittsburgh because once they got the lead, he didn't do nothing. Correct? And wait a second. Who fumbled the ball that got picked up and almost run back by the Steelers or something? Wasn't there something like that in there?
Well, Pittsburgh fumbled and the Colts almost ran back.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe he should have played better again. I mean, if you remember, I think the Steelers were like a 7 or 8 point dog in that game, and nobody really thought they were going to win. So Manning letting them at home stay in the game, I mean, come on. You got to, at some point, blame him somewhere because there would have been the year.
When you talk about Johnny Unitas as an innovator, I mean, look at Peyton Manning. Isn't he more of a modern innovator with the way that he approached the game, going to the line, identifying the defense, and either changing the play, option plays?
He's the first quarterback that ever did that.
I'm not saying he's the first, but since Peyton Manning, everybody does it. Everybody did not do that, did they?
Dude, do you watch football before 1970? There wasn't hardly, I mean, if you look in the 1960s, Johnny Unitas called his own offense. He didn't just walk up, identify something. He called the original play and then go up and audible if he didn't like it. So to say that Peyton Manning innovated something because he ran audibles, I mean, did you ever watch Joe Montana on NFL film? Black 59 Razor. I mean, everybody did that. And Peyton Manning did it well, but he didn't do it well in the playoffs. He didn't do it well against Bill Belichick because Bill Belichick would come out and run a lot of show coverages. He would confuse Peyton Manning, and Peyton Manning would throw his team the ball. That's on Peyton Manning. The difference between Peyton Manning and Tom Brady could very easily be who their coaches were, because Tony Dungy is a high school coach compared to Bill Belichick. Why you laugh?
Because it's kind of true.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you look at it, that would be my best defense for Peyton Manning, would be the fact that who his coach was. Because, and it's not that I think Tony Dungy was a terrible coach, but don't get me wrong. If Tony Dungy wasn't black, he wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. That simple. And people could get mad about it, but he won one Super Bowl. And you've got guys like Tom Flores who've won 2. You got Dan Reeves, who was a player, assistant coach, and head coach, went to 9. 9. And he don't get in the Super Bowl. And I'm sorry, but the Colts went to the Super Bowl a couple years, or a year to, was it the next year after Dungy left or 2 years after Dungy left, with Caldwell. And remember this, in Tampa, he had one of the greatest defenses of all time. They didn't win a Super Bowl until he left and somebody else came in and won it for him.
And from what I'm reading here, yeah, you're right. Quarterbacks used to call their own plays and everything, but that was something that stopped in the mid 80s for a while, and then Peyton Manning really brought it back.
No, it never stopped where a quarterback could change a play at the line of scrimmage, unless you had a rookie quarterback. Like I said, watch Joe Montana and tell me he didn't change half of Bill Walsh's plays, because most offenses are predicated on, I'm giving you a set play to call. All right. But on that set play, there's automatically 2 audibles. So if you're wanting to see what the safety's doing, and all of a sudden you got 2 safeties deep, you only got 6 guys in the box, I've got a run play that the coach has already given me I can audible to. If I don't think my pass play is going to work, but maybe a deep pass will work instead, I've got the 1 pass play also. That's the way quarterback play has always been, unless the coach doesn't trust the quarterback. And the Colts had a great offensive line, just like New England did. But in the end, you got to win. And in the end, he didn't. Not as much as the guys we have above him. But anybody know where we're at? My 3 was John Elway. What was your number 3, Anthony?
Unitas.
Same here. Also Unitas at 3.
So Sam's just going to follow along with one of us, so he's not completely wrong all the time.
Like, I've been wrong. I've been so wrong this episode. I don't think it really matters at this point. I can't save it.
We'll say it at the start before we got on the show.
These are lists. There's no right and wrong with lists.
Yeah, there is, because when your list gets completely shot down and you know you've been beat, that's just the way it is, Anthony. You know how that is when you try to argue for the Dallas Cowboys, Anthony.
Well, they I don't think they've lost a game this decade yet.
Well, have they played one?
No. So?
No. They haven't even practiced yet this year, Anthony. But does everybody have Tom Brady at 1 and Joe Montana at 2?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Show's over then.
I think everyone expected that.
I can say this, though. I mean, Montana's a guy I could make a case for against Brady. Because my biggest case for
he beat those powerhouse Bengals teams. That's why.
Well, those were powerhouse Bengals teams. And I'll tell you what, the 1988 Bengals would have beat any Rodgers Staubach Super Bowl champion.
See, I like having the camera now because we can see Anthony roll his eyes every time you mention the Cowboys, pretty much.
Yeah, but he knows it's right.
So Boomer Esiason, you're going to put him over Roger Staubach?
I will put Ickey Woods, James Brooks, what?
Over Tony Dorsett?
No. We're talking about teams playing each other, correct? I don't know why we would be talking about one or two running backs.
Well,
I'm telling you this.
Ickey Woods, so I'm assuming you're going to compare him to Tony Dorsett because he was Roger Staubach's running back.
Well, how about this? I will compare James Brooks favorably to almost any three-down back that ever played the game. He was a great running back. That was a team that had 2,000-yard rushers. They had the greatest offensive tackle of all time. They had one of the greatest offensive lines of all time, maybe the greatest offensive line outside of the Raiders and Steelers of the 70s up until that time. You know, all that says is boys. And you're right, because I cheer for teams with men on them, not boys. But how about this? Those Cowboys teams would have never touched the San Francisco 49ers.
Which 49ers?
The 88 49ers. They would have smoked all of Tony Dorsett and Roger Staubach's teams because they were a more complete team. There's no way the Dallas Cowboys defense of those years would have held Joe Montana to 13 points until 36 seconds left in the game. So you can talk all the shit you want about your Dallas Cowboys, but we all know the Dallas Cowboys' biggest problem is, through their history, is they're soft compared to great teams.
Oh, so Tom Landry's Cowboys are now soft because I thought the biggest issue was Jerry Jones.
No, the biggest issue was this. Soft is
so now the Cowboys, it's just the Cowboys.
Hey, tell me why the Pittsburgh Steelers always beat the Dallas Cowboys then.
Maybe more Hall of Famers on the team. I don't know.
Maybe tougher.
Better defense.
Tougher. Everything you're giving me means they're tougher. I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers were grown men. The Dallas Cowboys were little boys. You can see it every time Michael Irvin opens his mouth.
Why are we bringing Michael Irvin into this?
Because he's a Cowboy, and you love your Dallas Cowboys even though you're from New Jersey.
We travel well.
All right. But any final words before we end this mess, Anthony?
When are we coming back?
I don't know. You want to come back?
There's a lot of NFL news.
You want to come back tomorrow evening or Sunday evening?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know Sam McGinnis wants to argue some stuff too on Sunday. But maybe we can do tomorrow night at like 7 o'clock if you guys want. Do 7 o'clock the next two nights?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, he's the one that doesn't like Brady, right?
Yes.
Okay.
He also doesn't like you, Anthony.
That's okay.
I'm kidding. But, all right. So you want to tell everybody where they can find your show, Anthony?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at The Real NFL Guru. You can follow my show at The FF Face Off, and we can be found at all the top social media and podcast platforms.
All right, Sam?
Yeah, you can follow me at Sam_Teets33 on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at any time. I'm posting constantly articles, stats, and polls and things like that, so feel free to go check those out.
All right, guys, you can follow me at Grueling Truth on Twitter. You can hear our shows every day from now on, especially this week with the NFL draft coming. Are we doing a live NFL draft show?
I mean, let's do it. We've done it in the past, so.
Because you're on lockdown up where you guys live, so.
We're
supposed to be down here, but we all got guns, so we can pretty much do whatever the hell we want still. Remember, you can follow me at Grilling Truth. And you can also find me at Walmart every Wednesday night with my trunk open so people can come put the groceries in so I don't get the COVID. But for now, for Anthony Cervino, Sam Teets, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grilling Truth, where the legends speak.